Part 3. The first 18 months of Fallout 76 had only 2 minor content updates, because it had a lot of patching to do. The game had a disastrous launch, and there were a lot of bug compilations from this time period. So while they would make a bit of new content, the updates really focused around making the game functional. Although what's funny is that Nuclear Winter, as an update, basically got removed from the game. Nuclear Winter brought both the titular game mode, Battle Royale, as well as a raid mode that attempted to provide dungeon content. But both modes were removed, basically due to a lack of support from Bethesda. Battle Royale got busted by exploiters and cheaters, while the Vault 94 raids were just busted in general. This was before public groups were a thing, so finding additional players for group content wasn't as easy. It's just funny that of the 2 updates that were released in this time period, one of them is effectively gone from the modern game. Wild Appalachia, the first update, was a bit scattershot in terms of content. Like, it has a short story about a guy who's obsessed with cryptids ended up stumbling in a federal cover-up, Bethesda once again revealing their power level. But I don't know if it integrates particularly well. As an example, the update provides an upgraded backpack that will give you a much more spacious inventory that even becomes more powerful as you level up. We didn't find this until after level 70. But yeah, we ran through the content of these updates and realized just how big of a content drought Fallout 76 had experienced. For reference, Skyrim had all of its official DLC come out in just 13 months. But, in fairness, pretty much any update released in this time period was doomed to be examined unfairly due to the notoriety surrounding the game. They had to fix the fundamentals, or at least try to fix what they could given the limitations being the game was already out. And so we reach April of 2020. Things had been happening. Suddenly people had an abundance of free time on their hands. Cyberpunk 2077 was delayed until late in the year, so there was an opening in the market that Wastelanders was about to try and fill. Alright, so I may have tipped my hand a bit about Wastelanders. In fairness, it did try to tip its hand first. Seeing as we've managed to put an end to Parthenax, we return to the Vault 76 Overseer and she doesn't really approve. Going by the logs, I think she did everything we had done up until joining the US military. I think her critical injury happened on her way back to Fort Defiance, so she never got past the quest to join the Brotherhood, never saw the full Scorched Beast lair, and never met with Modus or found out about the Enclave. I think she's supposed to be scolding us for the deployment of nuclear weapons on targets other than the Scorched Beast lair, but we haven't done that yet. So it comes off as the first thing Wastelanders is trying to do post-main quest is scold us for attempting to stop the plague. Well, actually, it kind of establishes that killing the Scorched Beast Queen didn't accomplish much of anything, which you have to admit is bold writing. The missile silo and the Scorched Beast Queen fight are definitely the climax of the game, and the Scorched Plague was definitely the antagonist. There's nothing in the game that outright says that we won, but at the same time, that's the implication. Because if this is incapable of stopping the Scorched Plague, then we have a serious problem that we need to deal with. Remember, the Scorched are on the Virginia side of the mountains, and the plague affects more than just humans. Inoculation isn't going to accomplish anything when your transmission vectors include pretty much every animal group. In order to achieve a return to mean with Fallout 3 and 4, this DLC is going to have to focus pretty heavily on what we're going to do to stop the Scorched. So, can you guess what the Overseer wants to do about this problem? She wants to inoculate all of the people who have moved into New Virginia recently. Seriously? All of them? Is that even possible? Or realistic? Actually, no, as she just wants to target the 2 main groups that have moved here recently. And, for educational purposes only, as this is the story of a video game and has nothing to do with a real-life equivalent, what are we going to do, Overseer, if they were to reject this inoculation? What are we going to do about the people east of the bog, out in Virginia? Harper's Ferry's like 70 miles from the capital Wasteland. Well, Wastelanders doesn't actually want to continue the Scorched drama. We're going to hand out a single case of vaccine to each of the 2 groups, and then that's it. The Scorched Plague will literally never be addressed ever again. You know, in April of 2020, I might not have even bothered addressing inoculation as a plot point if I wasn't going to make it a main part of the story. I would have just left it at the problem being dealt with since the Queen died, and the remaining Scorched we see being the last of their kind. But I'm glad they did. It means that inoculation is a weapon we can use to control citizenship in New Virginia. And these quests are going to establish how that works. The Overseer wants us to make contact with the new groups while she figures out a better distribution method.
No, that's great. Now I have to go through this whole conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't interact with her. I guess I have to come in here on my own. So...
Really?
Yep. So... Okay.
You don't have the quests?
Nope. I have the quest to talk to her, but it's not going to let me talk to her. What's weird is, like, I'm in the house.
You heard the whole conversation.
Yeah, I heard the whole conversation. I have the quest active in my quest log right now. It's not even popping up on the top right hand of the screen.
Do you have to leave the team to talk to her? Because I'm pretty sure.
No, I can.
You can.
I think I can go in there solo. So, this is part of the Wastelanders update, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So this has been close to 2 years since the game came out now?
Yeah.
Right? And I still can't participate in the quest in a group.
Yes.
In a multiplayer game.
in a game that is billed as co-op. What, is there some kind of problem with that? Is there some kind of issue?
I'm telling you, this does not bode well. Hey, I know I was just here with that other lady, but I guess I wasn't paying attention or something. Could you go over all of that again? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I forgot. I don't care.
This is where the co-op questing experience went from non-existent to actively bad. We have played 70 hours of Fallout 76 together, 140 cumulatively, which should be an accomplishment of the game in itself. I'm not one of those "the game fell off after 200 hours" types, but the point is that we've been playing 70 hours of a multiplayer game, in which the game being multiplayer has been an exceptionally minor factor up to this point. From here on, outside of events, it was basically 2 single-player games being run in parallel. The quests have gone from apathetic about co-op to hostile, seeing as there is decreasing functionality and team members being able to complete objectives while inside the leader's instance.
Hopefully we can do this at the same time.
I have to think so, because this is a dungeon.
Yeah.
This is it.
If not, we're gonna make fun of it.
We need to get the power up and running and reformulate the machines for the inoculation. Fire
What?
everything up. Try not to get killed.
What?
Does she know? Do you know something I don't know?
Let the ghouls attack her. Stop shooting him.
Oh, I got mutated.
Ghouls. The ghouls are ignoring her.
Alright. I guess I'm doing it solo then. Man.
Is she gonna resurrect me? No, she's gonna look at me being downed.
It's gonna be hard to edit this section because, like, I just want to put this all in. Just, like, almost completely unedited.
Yeah. This is not an isolated issue. I found accounts of people trying to play the game cooperatively running it up against the same problems with the post-launch quest lines. A lot of it is tied to the dialogue, which is interesting because we didn't have these problems with Rose, but also the ways the quests are structured themselves. It would be one thing if we were expected to have the conversations that start and end quests in an instance, but even parts that take place inside dungeons do not function correctly in co-op. It's very obvious that the expected use case and design was single player. Why does it matter? Well, the multiplayer components essentially act as an anchor on design as is, meaning that if the game does something that doesn't utilize the multiplayer, It's taking on all of the burdens with none of the benefits. We're basically playing a really bad standalone mod for Fallout 4, but even less functional because Quest NPCs can't leave interior instances. In fact, I kind of wish this was just content updates for Fallout 4 because they could do more with that. What does the Overseer want us to do? She wants us to meet with the leaders of the two groups that have moved to Appalachia, the Settlers and the Raiders. She wants us to get them to agree to get annihilated. She justifies this by saying that not doing so is going to leave us with an impending medical crisis of New Scorched, but that raises the question of why we aren't also trying this with the Blood Eagles, the Free Radicals, the Wayward, the independent farmers that are in the forest now, the myriad of random people we encounter, or the immigrants who are coming in from Pittsburgh. 20 whole people becoming Scorched is not the end of the world. It would probably be better if we started trying to actually rebuild the local government in order to more efficiently be able to distribute inoculations. But whatever, we'll go do the short-term solution for now. We decided to meet with the Raiders first, since it'll probably be more convincing for the Settlers once we tell them that we've wiped out one of their main threats. Unfortunately, doing so requires Rose. Yeah, it turns out letting her broadcast was a bad thing. Made even worse by the fact that the uplink did literally nothing to help us with the Scorched. Basically, Rose wants to trick the Raiders into thinking their old boss is still alive, and then we'll give their leader, Meg, the trophy that signifies leadership. That'll be our end with her. God, it's even written like the original Raider quests. We go to Rosalind's memorial. It's amazing how much easier killing Deathclaws has gotten with time. And then we go to the secret hideout of a literal glowing agent. That's going on the list. I don't know who at Bethesda is such a big fan of Rose, or who thought we needed even more explanation about the relationship between her and the guy who made her. And mind you, this is all pretense to do something that we think is stupid and do not want to do. We went into this thinking that the solution to the medical crisis of unvaccinated Raiders was a nuclear warhead. And that was before our meeting with Meg. There is no world in which I think this is a good idea, because if I wanted to be a raider in Appalachia, I want to be the gang leader. I don't want a gang to arrive so I can join them. Either the raiders are a threat or our competition. Literally the only reason we would bother inviting Meg to Top of the World is so that we can ambush her and put 2 shells into the back of her head.
Is that great or what? Anyway, confession time. Sure, I could have got Meg out here lickety-split. I mean, don't get me wrong, she really ain't my biggest fan. But believe me, this broadcast, way more fun.
No, it wasn't. These quests are terrible. You're not Borderlands. Even if you were, there are more bad Borderlands games than good. I feel like Bethesda doesn't get that raiders are still people you can negotiate with. I'll just stand outside their base with a megaphone and tell them that they're all going to get killed by the Scorch if they don't meet with us. And if they don't comply, then screw it. Let them get killed. They'll probably be easier to clean up once they're infected. We have to clear the mezzanine. Again, I don't know why Rose keeps letting Scorched get into here, because this is the second time in this game that we've had to clear this place out. It is potentially interesting that we are seeing Scorched enemies though. You know, the ones that are too difficult to kill to justify not involving ourselves with the raiders. We probably kill as many Scorched just in the mezzanine as there are raiders at Crater. I would say it makes you think. If this wasn't an identical combat encounter to the main quest line when we did this exact same thing. So now we have to wager, is it an intentional point being made, or is it just laziness? The conversation with Meg has to be one of the worst conversations I've ever had in a video game. I know that Private Sessions hates the term ludonarrative dissonance, but I've gotten special permission from him to use it in this instance. I have never played a first-person video game that gave me more power than Fallout 76 has. I am clad in Enclave XL1 power armor. I am carrying a Mark 19, a fully automatic 40mm grenade launcher, which has the special property of firing twice with one trigger pull. My character has more special attribute points than any other Fallout protagonist. I am a member of the Fire Breathers, the Brotherhood of Steel, the United States military, and the Enclave. And I personally participated in the slaying of the Scorched Beast Queen. I have access to 3 nuclear missile silos which can create 1 warhead every hour. Standing before me are 3 raiders, wearing leather jackets, carrying pipe weapons, and handmade rifles. There is not a person among them that has a weapon that could even dent our armor. They are clearly not prepared to handle an opponent like us, and we are expected to just take threats from this group. It's really not surprising that the same person who wrote the Railroad wrote these quest lines. In my first encounter with the Railroad, I ended up killing all of them because they threatened me. I do not have a problem with threatening the player. Really, threatening the player creates a great opportunity for power fantasies in games where you can win the fight, or if you're given options to defuse the situation to feel like a diplomatic negotiator. I have a problem with not allowing me to exit the dialogue and just start shooting. I have literally not seen a single selling point to these guys. Even if you were to beeline it here, you have to reach level 20 and complete the Raiders section of the main quest to unlock this conversation. In other words, you'd run into a pretty similar issue. I just spent an hour doing both quests for Rose to unlock a conversation with a person who threatened me, and I'm not allowed to reply with threats of my own. My character just meekly tries to convince this person to please get vaccinated. No, I do not care that I was living inside the vault while all your friends died. If you expect respect because you left Appalachia to survive, then I expect respect for staying inside the vault to do the same thing. You left, and now you're back in New Virginia. You now abide by New Virginia laws. Get the shot or get shot. Wow, really settling into my role as the Enclave here. What I don't get about the Raiders is that they're presented as an anarchist tribe. Their language is force, and we're going to be given the option to side with them later, so it seems like from a role-playing perspective, you might be given the option to speak their language. You know, if you wanted to become a Raider. I just don't understand Bethesda's mentality towards writing their Raiders. It's just as simple as they're normal people, but they steal stuff from others. Don't make them quirky, don't give them bad attitudes, and don't make them misunderstood misfits. I mean, you can, if you can write those traits well. But I would start with just normal people who are Raiders. They're criminals. They do criminal things. I have to give credit to Private Sessions since he had way more exposure to the awful Raider content of Wastelanders. I am this angry with just the first conversation with Meg, who ends up being one of the more grounded characters in that faction. It absolutely gets worse, and I had no idea until I saw how bad it was in Private Sessions' video. So you should go check that out. Meg doesn't want to get vaccinated. Pretty bold stance there, Bethesda. She figures the best solution is to just kill the Scorched. I mean, it is, but I don't know how I feel leaving it up to people of your level of equipment and competence. So she insists we go check out her anti-Scorched operation.
Oh, look, another conversation that I can interact with.
That you'll have to have separately. So
maybe I can
Who the hell are you?
load in solo.
Well,
I'm pretty
ain't
sure I
flattered.
can't.
Sure she ain't gonna be too happy to see those Scorched rode over us like nothing. With my luck, I'm just gonna
You guys
hit
got
up
wrecked.
one of them things.
Yeah,
I
you
can
are.
enter solo.
Aren't you a ray of sunshine with the comfort skills of an apple? I'd at least expect you to lie to me and make me think it'll be all right.
It's not going to be all right. Your leader consigned you literally to die. Only death can prevent you from becoming a Scorched. Yes, give him the Emperor's Peace. I'm so conflicted. This is one of the hardest choices I've ever had to make. My choice is either to tell him to kill himself or to give him the Emperor's Peace. Yeah, the Raiders got wiped out, so I'm a bit conflicted about whether Meg's show of arrogance was intentionally setting her up for failure, because I can very easily believe, from having played the Railroad, that it's simply a coincidence. It would be actually good writing if that were the case, and, well...
This feels malicious.
It probably is malicious. I'll be honest, this seems like it was written with spite. This is so stupid. We return to Meg's base and tell her that her team got wiped out, so now she believes us. She makes idle threats in case we're deceiving her, as though she hasn't thought out the obvious. If her team was successful, and thus her crew didn't need to get inoculated, then we simply could have killed them and claimed the Scorched did it, in order to trick her into getting the jab. Sounds like something the Enclave would actually do. Like, straight up, what does she think is going to happen? If it's, not safe, then she's not going to get a chance to retaliate. If she doesn't trust us, then what we just did is probably going to make her more paranoid, not less. Also, this is another Bethesda game where a female character is paranoid, rude, and requires more convincing, while her direct male counterpart is polite and respectful. Not the last time it'll happen either. I'm starting to think their writers might be misogynists. Let's just add that to the list. Alright, so we need to go convince the settlers. I assume we have to go do some tedious quest for Modus or something, and then we'll meet with their leader who will ball bust us for several minutes. We walk straight into Foundation, find their leader, and he tells us that if we can convince their doctor that the Scorched Plague is a threat, that he'll take the inoculation. Honestly, I almost flipped out when he said that they were going to just stay here because they have walls, because I thought that the conversation with Paige was just going to be a repeat of Meg all over again. But no, the Foundation people make a pretty good claim. They took land, built it up, and have a structured society where people have roles appropriate to their talents. Most importantly of all, they can do all of this without taking anything from other people. If there was ever a choice between Foundation and the Raiders, who in their right mind would ever not choose Foundation? Why was this questline written this way? Why did I have to spend an hour doing terrible Rose quests, but could just talk to Paige like he's a normal person? Oh yeah, because Bethesda's trying to make statements about how talking to men is easy, but talking to women requires additional steps. Guys, come on, it's 2020. You can't write female characters like this. You can't make the vast majority of characters we hear in audio logs women just because you think they talk too much. Shaking my head. Actually, I thought the overrepresentation of women was mildly appropriate. Most of the combat-aged men were in China, so in the immediate aftermath of the war, there would be an above-average number of women in the post-apocalypse. But then is Bethesda saying that they don't think women should deserve equal positions in the military? I mean, I'm not just going to assume that most of the characters are women for any kind of progressive reason, given all the other political opinions shared so far. Paige's quest is identical to Meg's. We go out and find Paige's group that got wiped out by the Scorched. What's weird is, the inoculation is going to remove the Scorched as a threat from the story, even though they still have bodies and guns. Like, what wiped these groups out wasn't symptoms, it was getting shot at by the Scorched. So we find their doctor and he's not infected, but we can lie to him and say he is. I don't, but turns out if you do, then he quarantines himself. And then he ends his own life. Seriously, what the fuck? Bethesda, you got anything else you'd like to say? Oh, you've got opinions on how voting machines lead to easy fraud? I can't wait to hear the contrarians spread word online that Fallout 76 is actually good, probably with half-naked men edited into Enclave uniforms, while soy jacks on the left side of the meme say you can't enjoy the game because it was released broken. Truly, we live in an era. With promises of inoculation for both groups, the Overseer has figured that a Nuka-Cola facility used to create experimental beverages will be the solution. No, seriously. The Overseer's contribution to this effort, out of all the time that we've spent so far, is to spitball that maybe a soda plant will have the tools we need. Next, the writers are just going to say that we're putting faulty inoculation into the water. Sadly, it works. There are several skill checks available, but obviously most of them are superfluous. Either we do it or the Overseer does it for us. It's nice flavor to be able to say that since my character's intelligent, that they're capable of doing it. However, these aren't really what people want from skill checks. Skill checks means being able to meaningfully change the course of something because of a proficiency or deficiency. Our intelligence or charisma being acknowledged is a good thing, don't get me wrong. But it's not really accurate to say that Bethesda fixed the no skill check problem with these. These should be minor flavor checks, not the bulk of all checks added to 76. Also sad, of course, was the slow realization that any location we had found earlier during exploration that seemed to be of note was going to end up in a quest at some point. Using our blood samples, seeing as we've already been inoculated, we end up creating the inoculation. We get 2 cases of it, 12 bottles. 1 for each faction. I don't know if that's going to be enough, but the Overseer says she's staying to make more. Ideally, we should lock this facility down as a base of operations, but really it's just going to serve as a rationalization for why the Scorch are never going to be addressed again. The Overseer made enough for everybody that could ever be affected, and that's the end of that. There are no other possible uses for the miracle drink machine contained within this facility. Now, the Overseer wants to investigate a vault in the mountains. She claims that other 76 residents found it, I'm not sure how I feel about using the anonymous 76 dwellers as a plot device. You might as well have just said that anonymous 76 dwellers working for the Overseer dealt with the annihilation problem and just started the questline here. Being able to use mysterious other characters with the same capabilities as the player implies a degree of worthlessness to our own actions. But anyways, they found Vault 79. I think it's weird that the Overseer is so giddy about the prospect of trying to break into a vault. If you were an Overseer, wouldn't that be one of the main things keeping you awake at night? You'd have to be pretty psychotic to have no moral hangups about doing that to another person. But, as she reveals, her interest in 79 actually predated the war. It's interesting how much of a character the Overseer actually is, considering she's never given a name. So we head to Vault-Tec University, which is where she was educated and where Vault-Tec would get up to shenanigans. This is actually our second time here, as we came here earlier to get one of the logs. Also sad, of course, was the slow realization that any location we had found earlier during exploration that seemed to be of note was going to end up in a quest at some point. The quest is just kind of a standard Fallout 4 quest. We have to get fast-tracked through the university to get access to the full facility since the Professor Bot doesn't like the Overseer. See how weird it is to refer to her title instead of her name constantly? So, we complete the test simulation and resolve a conflict, and get into the heart of the facility where we find a presentation revealing that Vault 79 is the location of America's gold reserve. See, 79 is the atomic number of gold, so it makes sense that they'd put the gold reserve in 79. Personally, I don't see why the Enclave would bother numbering this vault. They didn't number the one at White Spring, but the reason the Overseer's interested in this vault in particular is that she wants to use the gold to implement the gold standard. No, seriously, that's the plot of Wastelanders. We are not getting a story about finally dealing with the Scorched, because we are going to do a gold heist in order to establish the gold standard. All that, and Bethesda hates the Federal Reserve. Actually, this is the second script I'm writing where the developers unintentionally glorify President William McKinley. Will it ever end? Okay, so there are a few problems. Vault 79 definitely feels like an Enclave plan, but the Overseer doesn't seem to be doing this on their behalf. I mean, she barely accomplished her original mission with the silos. She got pretty far, all things considered, but she didn't actually complete it. I don't think she even really knows that the Enclave exists in Appalachia. As to her plan, she's trying to establish a currency standard when she hasn't even established a government yet. There's no sign of Vault 79 going anywhere, so we'd probably be better off doing things like building settlements, farms, a military force, and some level of internal and external economy before we try to implement a gold-backed currency. And you could actually do that mechanically if you used Fallout 4's settlement system. Hell, silver would probably be a better standard to establish first because typically gold was used as the reserve standard. Mind you, this is based on centuries of economic theory and practice. I don't think adopting the gold standard in the post-apocalypse would be anywhere near successful because it implies a level of global economy and trading. New Virginia wouldn't have any trading partners. In 175 years, we still won't have any viable trading partners. Granted, of course, I'm not expecting the Overseer to have an economic forecast that far ahead. I just think it's kind of bizarre that she would have these super strong opinions about how best to rebuild New Virginia in such an oddly specific way and what should clearly be ineffective for the present situation. But whatever, the Overseer wants a heist story and we're going to go through with it. Why bother with it being about gold? Surely there's some other kind of resource that would be more valuable to New Virginia. We don't know if Vault 76 had a GEC, for example. Could be valuable in rehabilitating Ash Heap or the Toxic Valley. Maybe the GEC could help stop the Scorched Plague from spreading further. The Overseer wants to complete this heist using these services of the Raiders and Settlers. But you don't actually have to include both groups, so we ended up splitting up who did what quests. Yeah, Wastelanders goes so far as to have a competing quest line, which has to be completed with 2 characters. It isn't much, but it is ambitious that they tried. I respect the effort more than I do the cheap skill checks and dialogue. I also appreciate that I do not, at all, have to involve the Raiders in this operation. I mean, it's better to involve them so you can farm some easy rep. Yeah, the Settlers and Raiders have reputation bars. which would be a good thing, but remember that this is now an MMO, so these are supposed to be done with daily quests. And despite doing it daily for like 2 weeks, I still hadn't reached a point that I had actually unlocked anything valuable. These are also extremely repetitive. Fallout 76 is the liminal space between a regular game and an MMO. It feels just enough like a first-person looter shooter that you might forget that you have 3 daily quests for rep, 2 of which are identical every day, in order to complete a rep grind and unlock some in-game equipment. I didn't try to metagame it because frankly I was still playing it like a normal Fallout game. But yeah, if you want to absolutely maximize your rewards from this questline, then you need to start both lines and do as much as you can before picking a side.
I can think of a few ways that gold could help us. So you just need someone to do a job, huh? Yeah, we know the drill. Long as we get paid, we won't have any problems.
About that. The 2 questlines are fairly similar. There are 3 specialists will need to complete the job, and then there will be a complication. We start with the entry specialists. The raiders enlist a demolitionist while the settlers use an excavator. The problem is there's no point in resolving Lou's feelings about being turned into a ghoul if you decide to side with Penelope and use the motherlode. In GTA Online, after its initial heist update, which was just linear missions, they started doing heists where you would be given different options about how you wanted to approach the job. If you were targeting a casino vault, for example, you'd get an option between a drill, explosives, or stealth. Obviously, since this is the post-apocalypse, we can't fake being delivery men. But the point is, you can mix and match the individual steps of the heist, and it's replayable. This is just formulaically performing the same steps for each group down to asinine details, as per usual for Bethesda. For instance, the writers want to make a big deal about ghouls and Wastelanders, so both entry specialists are ghouls. Mind you, the Settlers entry specialist isn't tied to Foundation. She would have done the job if we'd been doing this for the Raiders. So really, it could have just been a choice between the 2. I always wondered, though, why did ghoulification only become a thing so close to the war? Well, we're too many games deep to get into that. The Settlers want to make use of a giant autonomous drilling machine that was built in the pre-war. I mean, how can you not side with the Settlers after you hear that? This also serves as additional world building for the major mining company in Appalachia, especially since the alternative is just helping some guy work through his problems being a ghoul and being cursed with good luck. Next, we need an entry specialist. Now, which sounds better, a girl with a Chinese stealth suit or a literal child who can crawl through vents because she is physically small? And you can get the stealth suit from doing the quest, which Private didn't because he didn't do the Foundation side. So if he wanted to get his hands on the suit after completing the Raiders questline, and I'm not kidding here, he would have to spend 2 weeks worth of gold bullion to buy it, after farming a significant amount of Foundation reputation. And mind, there is no equivalent reward from doing the Raiders side of the questline. Honestly, it would be better if you missed out on the suit to just make a new character instead, because there's no way I would ever justify playing Fallout 76 for 2 weeks to get it. And the bullion is better spent on the SS armor set. Oh, seriously, that's what the community calls the Secret Service armor. The stealth suit functions like a stealth boy, while also absorbing fall damage and radiation. It's not good in a fight though, but once I had it, I kept it on me for the entire game. It was fun to use in the missile silos. Also, the mission to get it involves busting a bunker full of Chinese spies by the White Spring Resort. I like that the subtitles just say, "Speaking Chinese." Our stealth specialist Jen basically wants us to help her find her mom, who was a Chinese operative. She's also the second ghoul in the Wastelanders story to have immaculate hair, despite this being the post-apocalypse, and despite being blasted with enough radiation to be turned into a ghoul. Our character canonically does not immediately pick up that there is more to Jen's story than just being casually interested in Chinese tech, but the conversation is really weird. I'm glad Jin is at least considerate to realize we don't speak Chinese and does the important bits directed at her mother in the Lord's American. Jin is also probably a murderer, so I spared her mother, but Jin the whole time kept talking in terms of killing her and later implies that her mom died, but she was still alive and well when I left.
I'll finish up here and then meet you back at Foundation, okay? I need a moment. I'm going to destroy the mechanism and then bury it with my mom. When Penny took a look at the suit, she found a
Bury it with your mom? She was alive when we left.
even if the trackers could be...
Did you fucking kill your mom? I'm sorry, you can't just gloss over that detail. When I left the room, she was still alive.
I'm thinking about taking my mom back north to be buried next to my dad. But I might wait and see if Samuel wants to go with. Traveling by yourself is always risky. I'd ask you to come, but you were there when she died.
No, I wasn't. I was not there when she died. What the fuck happened?
Uncomplicated by comparison.
What did you do?
I'm alright, yeah.
So I don't know if this is broken quest scripting, like the game incorrectly assigned me the journal stage for killing her mom, even though I didn't. Apparently this is a common issue, and not just with this quest. Any situation in Wastelanders where the game is supposed to track a variable, for instance whether or not you treat the child in the Raiders questline badly, has the tendency to be tracked incorrectly. I was talking this through with Private, and here's my theory. So, to prevent hacking quest stages, I assume journal stage variables are stored server-side in a file for our character. This means the game would be calling home every time it needs to verify a quest stage to give us the correct dialogue. But the dialogue pops up very fast, meaning that there must not be a large window of time for the server to respond. So Jen's mom dying is kind of a default for the quest. Every other possible permutation would be some variation of her being alive. So if the server times out waiting for a response to what quest stage I'm on, then the dialogue seems to default to the minimum stage. In other words, at times, the game is so laggy, it literally breaks the dialogue. Bethesda's found a new way to do emergent storytelling because Bethesda's bug literally convinced me that Jen had murdered her mother and nothing was ever going to acknowledge that fact. Remember, this is supposed to be the update that proved the game was now fixed. It probably wasn't helped by getting live commentary that what was going on in the Raiders quests was worse.
I wonder how many people at Bethesda have actually talked to children. Because I don't know, I have quite a few nieces and nephews. They don't talk like this at all.
Why'd you take her toy? That's a weird trick they pulled to get her height so low.
Please, give me back Lucy's toy. Oh, please. I really wanted something to remember my Lucy by.
Can I adopt you? Why don't you come live at my house, child?
We can put you to work. And I think they're younger than this girl too. Like this girl looks like she's like maybe 9. And she talks like a 3-year-old.
She's developmentally stunted because of the post-apocalypse. You have to understand there's no public school. Finally, we need someone to deal with turrets, which turns out to mean a combat specialist. This is one where I don't know if the settlers side has the better option. We meet with some ex-military folks, aka dudes in their 50s. You're given the option to cite your accomplishment in some of the quests, but only a couple garner respect. It's really sad how this questline tries to undermine the main quest accomplishments. Okay, if you asked someone what qualified them to establish a new currency, and they responded that they had nuclear weapons, I think that's a qualification worth considering, because it means they either have at least one of the markers of government, that being military might, or a dead man's switch. Why do I only get to pick one of these options? Also, okay, so I'm talking to a US Army captain, and he wants to know our credentials for taking the gold supply. So we start, the top one is, I'm a survivor from Vault 76. Boring. I'm a fellow soldier, private first class. Actually, I'm a general, but, you know.
Yeah.
Good attempt. I am a member of the Enclave. We are the government. Now that's an option. The next one. I command Appalachia's nuclear arsenal.
Hell yeah! Yeah, why can't you pick the last two? We are the Enclave. I am the Enclave.
Seems to me that a lot of people around here have access to that arsenal.
That's awesome. At least there's finally we're allowed to use the fucking proper dialogue option that we should have been using this whole time.
He's not impressed that we have the nuclear arsenal because apparently other people have access to it as well.
Excuse me? What?
Joined up with that
Does that mean he has access to
He
it?
contacted us when we started poking around here. Thompson, what did you say he reminded you of?
I said he reminded me of the Galaxy News radio announcer, but, like, obviously evil, sir.
They won't accept the Enclave answer either. Oh, no.
Oh.
Guys, come on. I get that he sounds evil, but that's just the brain damage causing that speech impediment. Ableism is so not cool, Bethesda. Every time this happens in a Bethesda game, the best answer is the default least qualified response. If anyone ever asks me for my qualifications, I guess I'll say that I managed to claw my way out of the womb, or that I was number 1 in the sperm race. Then, after the squad is assembled, there will be a complication. It is actually that formulaic. In both cases, the complication has to do with raiders. Almost like they're a problem element in that Meg does not in fact have them under control. Penelope got kidnapped. I don't know why, since I blew the raider's head off with a shotgun before he could say. It was actually a pretty fun sequence. Just getting to play a no-nonsense character and not having to tolerate raiders. Although 2 problems. I lost rep with Paige because I complained about the fact that he didn't do the obvious thing of traveling with Penelope, and I had to go back to Charleston for the 2nd time in this questline. Also sad, of course, was the slow realization that any location we had found earlier during exploration that seemed to be of note was going to end up in a quest at some point. Heist time. The motherlode destroys itself completing the mission, which is made all the more hilarious when I found out how much easier getting in was for the raiders. The rest is pretty much identical between playthroughs though. They reprise the ghoul conflict by having one of the Secret Service vault defenders get ghoulified and generally worried that he's feral. That might have been a decent plot point, had Penelope made a bigger deal about herself being a ghoul. And yes, Vault 79 is guarded by the Secret Service, even after 25 years. Do I just... like, maybe I'm the one who doesn't know how long a quarter of a century is. Wouldn't I feel foolish if I didn't know how long 25 years was, and have been making such a big deal about how long 2.5 decades is? So are the Secret Service people breeding? Is it like a normal vault just with a bunch of gold inside? Why are they wearing suits instead of vault jumpsuits? The Secret Service ends up not really having a problem with us on account of saving them from a nuclear disaster. And then, the best part, we can just take the entire cut of the heist. We get a minor bit of disappointment, but that's it. Even though from a meta standpoint, giving them the cut is the better value in terms of daily grinding, it is so worth it in character to keep the gold and watch them not be allowed to be mad at us. This was a terrible quest line. The game really was confident that I was going to like this more than I did the main quest, that my favorite part of the main quest line was roses, that I was going to appreciate a topical story about a plague, and that the gold heist was totally exciting. When someone says that Wastelanders fixed the game, remind them of this storyline. The other stories aren't much better either. We did do the Wayward questline, which ironically has more acknowledgement of the Enclave than the main Wastelanders questline. And you might miss that just because you do the Wayward right out of the vault. To wash our mouths of the taste of this garbage, we did 3 rounds of the game's best content.
Because you're trespassing, and we don't take kindly to criminals.
Suddenly every Tom, Dick, and Mary thinks they're in charge. What makes you so special, huh?
Not our problem? Did you lose your eyesight in the vault?
I wish I could say that things were going to get better with the DLC releases. So how about a break first to talk about the public events? I think if there was any valid reason to continue playing Fallout 76 in the modern day, it would be public events. It's a pseudo-multiplayer experience with some variation in quality, but some pretty decent ones mixed in. Public events basically work by an encounter triggering on the map and then an invite going out to all the players. It is a bit gamey to be receiving these event invites during story content, but so are the Battle Pass challenges. The rewards are typically legendary cores and treasury notes. Cores are only used in crafting legendary items, meaning that they eventually become worthless. Treasury notes are exchanged for gold bullion. You can only exchange a max of 40 notes per day, and I actually found that a decently hard limit to reach. I have no idea how people are hitting the 80 note limit during Gold Week. On the flip side, the legendary grind was so easy that I would usually have a stack of new legendaries that I needed to offload in just an hour. There were a couple days where we didn't feel like subjecting ourselves to more of the story DLC and would just do events instead. I do need to put in here a bit of confusing design though. Daily quests have a set time that they reset, but vendors instead reset 20 hours after the first time that you use them. It's really weird that you wouldn't just have a daily reset period for everything during the American early morning, because daily quests would reset 2 hours into our scheduled play sessions. Events were a bit fun. Power armor and heavy weapons are so common and varied, it almost felt like a 40k game seeing what everybody was running, especially during some of the more recent events like Eviction Notice. As time went on, Bethesda seemed to add more events that involved a large number of enemies, which I think helps the game a lot. We would hop into Radiation Rumble every time we saw it just because it was a massive experience farm, but also that feeling that I am one in a group helping to hold the line. It reminded me of Guild Wars 2 public events, which really helped foster the sense that you were one of many helping to accomplish a common goal. You know, have it actually function like a multiplayer game? This is actually an area where the DLC is almost universally superior to the base game. The base game events are definitely varied in terms of quality. Some of them have gradually broken over time, and some of them had to be removed due to breaking. But sometimes even the new events, like the wheel at Nuka World, would just randomly fail in the middle of them for no discernible reason, confusing everybody involved. There are also a few boss events like the Scorched Beast Queen, but also events like Earl, Imposter Sheep Squatch, and the Ultrasight Titan. And some events like Project Paradise and Radiation Rumble, which require multiple players to fully complete. This is one of the areas where post-launch updating has improved things quite a bit. The quantum level scaling change means that players of any level above the event minimum can participate on fairly even footing, even if there were plenty of players who were one-shotting almost everything. And the game having PvP would probably be a problem given how much indiscriminate friendly fire goes on during these events. I definitely think that PvE event players are definitely the core audience, given some of the later event history. There are multiple events which are no longer in the game due to being seasonal, which updates centered around. For instance, updates with events related to the Mothman and Mothership Zeta were added, but were not available during our time. There's actually quite a bit of content in 76 that was limited time. I don't buy that the Atom Shop is misunderstood when so much of it seems to be fueled by FOMO. Fear of missing out is a strategy where you offer content for limited time windows in order to encourage continual playing and impulse buying. They'd rather you play for an hour a day than until you feel like you've played enough. What if there's a cool outfit that you're going to miss out on? Or maybe some decorative wallpaper? I don't know. I'm not the type who gets taken advantage of by systems like this. Usually when someone tells me that there's a limited time item, and it's a digital thing made of pixels and polygons, I know full well it's just a line of code that's restricting that access. It's not like a physical print run of something where only 1,000 ever got made. So I usually just avoid that stuff, but not everybody has the same self-preservation instinct. But I mean, it's just optional cosmetics, right? No, but Fallout 4 didn't need optional limited time paid cosmetics to be, good? Question mark? Oh, wait, it got hit with the Curse of the Creation Club too. Also, it's not all cosmetic, but a lot of the pay-to-win elements are tied to Fallout First rather than the Atom Shop. Just a little double dipping there. The reason I'm discussing this is to imagine the mentality of the person who plays Fallout 76 every day for maybe an hour or two. Just hopping in, doing their dailies, and whatever public events pop up. I love live service jobs in my Fallout game. I love reputation grinds, daily grinds, event grinds, legendary grinds. I love the content treadmill. I will eat the bug. As fun as events were, they were an added spice to shake up the mediocrity of the game. I cannot imagine having very much fun once they represent the bulk of all content you would be doing every day. There just aren't enough of them, let alone enough which are interesting to repeat. Project Paradise is a good example of an event I found interesting, which was added post-launch. You have to collect food to level up critters to help them survive a defense wave, and it's very chaotic. No two runs of this event were similar. But I also have no idea what the context of the event is. I know it's in the game, I just never ran into it doing the event itself. To compare this to my days of being a Guild Wars 2 event commander, some events needed the context of questing in the area, but most events were self-explanatory. That's a giant dragon, and it needs to be slain. I played back during the first expansion, if anyone needs context. A lot more of these were also the climax of stories, like the Scorched Beast Queen was, except there were multiple storylines going on. Despite its relative simplicity, I think the Scorched Beast Queen is a good fight. So much so that people have it on farm, even building bases for the purpose of fighting her. It seems like public events are where base building would shine, since building arenas and other survival games with boss encounters is pretty common. Like, this game has a whole base building system and lets you have two, but actually sitting down and taking the time to do it is never necessary. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to utilizing all of the game's mechanics. As much as I enjoyed building Cloud Ruler Temple, it was really just personalizing a space that could have been a 3x3 cube of workbenches, located somewhere out of the way for free fast travel purposes. I did like making Esbern sleep on the edge of a cliff though, but we were making our own fun out of the system. It barely worked because enemies would just randomly spawn in the middle of the base, not in a logical spot like the edge, just straight up in the middle up on a rock, behind defenses. Apparently culling spawn locations in player bases is something that only indie survival games figure out. After playing Fallout 76, I started to play an actual campaign of TES 3MP and ended up making a whole manor in the construction set to use as a base. Look at how natural this environment is filled out, despite the fact that I pretty much just made a box with furniture. Despite having no base building mechanics, Morrowind is far more functional when it comes to home decor. These shelves by the door serve functions in addition to looking good decoratively, and literally all I put down in the construction set was just the shelf. Over time, as I began to lose interest in continuing to try and replace the vampire shotgun, I also lost interest in the public events. The spectacle and gear treadmill are only so effective with a game this boring. This was part 3 of a 4-part edit of my Fallout 76 video. If you want to see the uncensored cut early, check out my or Private Sessions membership platforms. If you're watching the premiere, go check out Private Sessions' video.
Back to Vault-Tec University. It was such a fascinating place the first time. Now we have this whole map full of places we haven't explored yet, but yeah, let's go back to the place that we've been to, I think twice already. Why is this game like this?
Why is this perceived as better? Like, I gotta be honest, the main quest was better just because there was an actual sense of flow to where the areas it was sending you to.
Yeah.
Other than the free states. But go back to Abby's bunker. Remember how we played an entire game with a backpack that only gave us 4 carry weight because it weighed 1 pound?
See, but it's the immersive experience because you know, other players didn't have access to that when they were originally playing.